Everybody ready? Ready on the right?
We're ready.
Poke at him. You guys ready?
Ready, right? Yeah. Let's go.
Just making sure. Okay. I'll call to order the May 18th, 2017 meeting of the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District. With the clerk, please call roll.
Director Bennett,
Here.
Lazalde, Snyder,
Here.
Patino, Richardson, Williams, Wolf, Hartman, Adam,
Here.
Lavanino, Andrezek, Clark, and Chair Mosby.
Here. At this time, will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first item of business is the minutes for the March 16th, 2017 meeting. Any discussion?
Move acceptance.
We got a move? We got a motion?
Second.
And a second? Roll call vote.
Director Bennett,
I believe that I was not in attendance at that meeting.
okay.
Does it? Okay. Then I'll say yay.
Snyder,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Wolf, Hartman, Adam,
Aye.
Andrezek, and Chair Mosby.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
The next item is the approval of the administrative items. Does any board member wish to pull any of these items?
I do have one speaker slip.
One speaker slip. Nobody wishes to pull? All right. Would you like to read in public comment?
Okay, this is a speaker slip for item A5. This is to adopt a resolution to amend resolution number 15-22, changing the maximum amount the district can accept from the California Air Resources Board for the Carl Moyer program to $1,500,000 per year. Sorry, the speaker is Francis Lemons.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm obviously here in support of your item number A-5. Basically, I want to thank you and the board members and Chairman Jim Mosley for letting me speak on behalf of Lompoc Unified School District. But before I begin my remarks, I wish to thank the board on behalf of LUSD Superintendent Trevor McDonald and his cabinet for your advocacy of students, staff, and the entire community of Lompoc by helping provide buses that produce lower emissions. We work every day to provide safe, welcoming environment for our students in our district, and it's an honor to have you as our partners in this work. I've been in the transportation industry for 24 years and at Lompoc Unified for 6.5. And in this short time, the Air Pollution Control District has helped Lompoc Unified immensely. Getting the Carl Moyer grant would help LUSD Transportation Department replace aging, unreliable buses. The Crown Coach buses are currently gross polluters. This grant will help the district replace these buses. These buses are used on a daily basis. The Carl Moyer grant will help us greatly towards the purchase of new buses. These buses will cut out harmful chemicals and reduce our carbon footprint. It will also help us meet California's transportation emissions control standards. We plan on purchasing 6 school buses. 5 of them will be CNGs. 1 of them will be a diesel. This school year, through the month of April, running our buses on CNG versus diesel, we've saved $86,895.41. This money saved stays in the general fund to help our students. Like all public schools in the state of California, we are facing budget challenges. The grant will greatly aid in our efforts to replacing aging buses that are heavy polluters with new low pollution buses, while simultaneously helping us to reduce our general fund expenditures. Every single dollar of the savings to our general fund means money that can be used to our core academic mission to offer opportunity to each and every one of our 9,600 students. Thank you again for your past support. We take great pride on the role that we play in the education of our children and see the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District as vital partners in this important task. We hope that this partnership can continue for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Question?
comment on A2. We're paying to replace a bunch of tractors and off-road equipment replacement. What happens to the tractors that are replaced? Are they destroyed, or do they go to another state, or do they come back in the road? What?
Can we get staff to read that item into the record and,
I have to read that item into the record.
no, well,
To comment on it.
we'll let staff and let you,
For the public broadcast.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure, they know it.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, item A2 is the grant programs. This is to receive and file the following grant program-related activity. A is a summary of emission reduction grant agreements approved by the Air Pollution Control Officer for the period of March 2nd, 2017 through May 3rd, 2017, in accordance with Board Resolution number 09-14, including Plantel Nurseries Off-Road Equipment Replacement Program, Babe Farms Off-Road Equipment Replacement Program, Destiny Farms Off-Road Equipment Replacement Program, Thompson Vineyard Off-Road Equipment Replacement Program, Rancho Laguna Farms Off-Road Equipment Replacement Program, Aquistapache Farms Off-Road Equipment Replacement Program, and B, an update on the old car buyback program for vehicles retired during the period of March 2nd, 2017 through May 1st, 2017.
Now my question. I know what item 2, what happens to the old car buyback program. They get destroyed, but what about the off-road equipment replacement program? What happens to that equipment?
That also follows the Carl Moyer guidelines that's established by the state, and those engines that are being removed are destroyed.
The entire tractor?
The engine
Okay,
is destroyed,
cool.
yes.
Okay, want to make sure. Thank you.
anybody else want to pull anything else, or? No? Okay, we need a motion? First and second, can we get a roll call vote?
Director Bennett?
Aye.
Snyder?
Aye.
Richardson?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Hartman?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
Andrezek?
Aye.
Chair Mosby?
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Okay, the next item is public comment. Now's the time for the members of the public to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Any requests?
No speaker slips.
No. You sure? All right. The next item is the director's report.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. I have 3 brief items I'd like to bring to your attention. First off, I wanted to let everyone know that we've been working with the County Planning and Development to develop a list of local greenhouse gas mitigation measures for projects undergoing CEQA review. These are projects, industrial projects primarily, that have the 1,000 metric ton threshold of significance. We have been contacted also by project proponents as far as providing recommendations for local mitigation for greenhouse gases. And at your June board meeting, staff will be presenting an update on the list of measures that we've identified that could be considered by both the project proponents and the decision makers as those projects proceed through the review and approval process. The next item, non-attainment transitional. This is an item we discussed at our last board meeting. We received official notification yesterday from the California Air Resources Board that our designation for the state ambient air quality standard for ozone has officially been changed from non-attainment to non-attainment transitional. And this item we will bring back to your board at your August meeting for consideration to modify the 2016 ozone plan regulatory schedule. And then the last item I wanted to bring to your attention, speaking engagements. I have had the opportunity and have been invited to participate in 5 separate engagements since your last board meeting in April. And I was able to present on air quality matters that occur throughout our county. Those groups include Our Voice on TVSB, League of Women Voters, Air and Waste Management Association, National Adaptation Forum, and then earlier this week at the Colleges of Law. Some say it's a rubber chicken tour, but I just have to recognize the great opportunity that these speaking engagements have provided me to reach a vast array of stakeholders throughout our community and increase awareness of the APCD's mission and mandates. And that concludes my director's report.
Any questions for the director? Okay. The next item is discussion item number 1. The clerk, please read it into the record.
Item number 1 is to view Protecting Blue Whales and Blue Skies, a 7-minute film by Earth Media Lab for the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation.
Before we show the film, I just have a few points. I wanted to make everyone aware that this film is available on the APCD's website. We also are making DVDs if any group that you're aware of would like to have a DVD for showing. To date, it's been shown before the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary Advisory Committee, the Santa Barbara Natural History Museum, and then used in classes at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. For the upcoming plans, we'll be placing this on the public access channels. It will also be used in conferences such as the Green Marine Green Tech Conference in May that focuses on vessel activity or container ship activity. It will be used and distributed to the shipping companies and the shipping industry. We found through the 2016 pilot project that recognition of their participation in this program was very important to them. So we want those industries to also have this resource. And the filmmaker will be submitting it to Film Fest throughout.
Between the coast of Southern California and the Channel Islands lies a 70 nautical mile stretch of the Pacific Ocean known as the Santa Barbara Channel.
The exciting things about this region, the Southern California Bight and the Santa Barbara Channel in particular, is it's one of the most reliable places to see concentrations of blue whales anywhere in the world. Blue whales occur throughout the world's oceans and occurred in some of their largest numbers in the Southern Ocean. But right now, with what whaling has done, this is probably the best place to see blue whales around the year. There are areas and can get hundreds of blue whales in an area feeding, and that's something you don't run into anywhere else in the world.
This same channel also serves as an important passageway for another ocean giant, container ships. Maritime shipping is the lifeblood of the global economy. At any given moment across the globe, thousands of container ships are steaming across oceans, delivering 90% of our everyday goods and products. In the Santa Barbara Channel alone, more than 2,700 ships power through these waters annually, making it a very busy shipping lane.
One of the emerging threats to many large whale species, not just blue whales, has been ship strikes. These ships move incredibly fast, and these whales that just are not used to this kind of a threat don't seem to know how to avoid that or even recognize it as a threat. So that puts them a vulnerability of actually just being run over by the ship, either hit by the bow or sometimes hit by the propeller.
We understand that no ship captain wants to hit a blue whale or a humpback whale or a fin whale as they come through the channel. We also understand that they have busy schedules to keep as they move the world's goods from Asia to the West Coast. Our mandate at the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary are to protect these blue humpback and fin whales as they come here every summer to feed.
Shipping has also been linked to increased air pollution in coastal communities.
Well, we estimate that ships contribute more than 50% of our nitrogen oxides pollution in Santa Barbara County, and in Ventura County it's more than 25%, and we're very concerned about that because NOx combines to form ozone, which is a principal component of smog, and it's very, very harmful to human health.
We're worried about exhaust in this community. Asthmatic children have inflamed airways. These are the tubes that go into the lungs, and they're very sensitive to anything that will make inflammation worse. Nitrogen oxide is one of those things because it's converted by sunlight to ozone, and it's a pro-inflammatory mediator, ozone, and it will make the inflammation in the lungs even worse, making it more difficult for them to breathe.
Groups from Santa Barbara and Ventura counties formed a unique partnership to try a new approach: voluntary vessel speed reduction.
The Vessel Speed Reduction Incentive Program offers financial incentives to ships that are willing to slow down voluntarily as they pass through the Santa Barbara Channel. On average, ships traveling through the Santa Barbara Channel are traveling 14 to 18 knots. In the incentive-based program, we're asking that they slow down to 12 knots, and we're offering a bonus if they're willing to slow down to 10 knots.
There are certain speeds where the vessels are more energy efficient and therefore use less fuel and produce fewer air emissions. You know, reducing speed really does reduce air pollution. The way that works, it's just like your car. As you know, your car is more fuel efficient, say if you're operating at 45 or 55 rather than say at 85. So slowing down does get you that better fuel efficiency. The same thing is true with the vessel. By slowing down the vessel to something closer to the optimal speed, we can reduce fuel consumption, and that reduces the air pollution. Maersk is really committed to a healthy environment, and that's why we really value this opportunity to partner with this innovative team on this voluntary speed reduction program.
This program is really what I think we all aspire to achieve. A program that achieves the result on a voluntary basis, where private industry sees that there is a better way of doing things that still allows them to achieve their bottom line, but is being sensitive to the impacts to the environment.
It's always gratifying when you can work in partnership with private industry. And we've been very excited to see the way the shipping companies have really come to the table, have talked to us about the program, have helped us form the program, and are now very actively participating in the program.
Initially, as usual, we were a little reluctant, but when we actually got to the point that I picked up the phone, talking to another human face, and it opened up the dialogue and realized that NOAA wasn't out there to be very heavy-handed with what you're trying to accomplish. And in trying to have it one way, it's been two ways.
Slowing ships down is a solution to multiple environmental challenges. Slower ships are safer ships for whales. Slower ships emit less air pollution, and slower ships are quieter ships, reducing the noise impacts in a very noisy ocean.
50 years ago, many scientists who studied whales thought the blue whale was doomed to extinction. And we're fortunate now that we've seen that turn around. Populations around the world are slowly recovering, and one of the biggest success stories we have here is in the Santa Barbara Channel.
I think all the partners in this program recognize that it's a very special project. We've brought together really diverse interests, government agencies, nonprofits, private industry, and created a voluntary, non-regulatory solution that addresses all these problems together: air pollution, greenhouse gases, whale protection in this very special marine environment. And we look forward to continuing and expanding this program.
Any discussion from the board? I have a couple simple questions, if I could, on that. You showed a quick glimpse of a whale strike. Where was that whale strike?
I think that's the way the ship came into one of the ports. It came in that way. They aren't certain how long the whale was before.
Was that a blue whale or?
That was not. That was a fin whale, and I think it was one of the California ports, but I'm not certain exactly. But it's kind of a well-known picture because the captain of the ship was not aware at all. And as you can see, it's very hard, the sight lines on a container ship, to see
What I was
whales.
just getting, because I'd asked before about the whale slowdown and strikes and stuff, and then there's a little bit of a, and I'll say it, disingenuine then, in my eyes, that we're showing, now there is a strike, but you're making it look like it was a strike in the channel, because we're talking more specifically there, so.
I can get you more information about where they think that strike happened, but I don't think they know for sure.
Maybe, I mean, I'm sure your thing's already out, but you should have something down there qualifying what it was, that it's not a blue whale, and it wasn't in the
No.
channel for sure.
No,
So.
although the fin whales are outside the islands,
Right.
so we are protecting them as well because the routes go both ways.
And I, yeah.
Oh, when you're done, I guess.
Okay. One other question that I had in there is, it was mentioning the volunteer aspect of it, and we know that some of it's paid, but what percentage of it are we getting up to with volunteers doing this? And, I mean, it's not really, is it I guess paid volunteer on reducing the speed?
Well, it's pretty clear that the incentive does not cover the full cost to the shipping companies. On the other hand, they are saving money on fuel costs, so it's a complicated scenario. But it is only a partial thing, and they are often involved in it out of the want of supporting the program and the desire for the recognition.
And that's what I was hoping to see, more people embrace it that way, where you could, but there's an incentivized volunteerism.
Exactly,
kind of-
and that's kind of one of the goals of this whole film, was to give them some recognition at the end for their participation, and then that could hopefully entice us for more participation as we go forward.
Okay. Hey, Director Hartman?
Thank you. First of all, I think it's a really terrific partnership and a great film, and thank you for bringing it to us today. This goes to the underlying program and performance measures. I know there is a long history of whale strikes in our channel, and as the film pointed out, NOx emissions and the impact on our air quality. Will you be measuring, or can you estimate what the benefits that we're getting from the volunteer program over time?
We do calculate the emissions benefits, and we can get very specific about those because we have information about the engine characteristics for each vessel. The challenge is to quantify the whale protection benefits, because often when whales are struck or injured, they sink. They're not buoyant. They don't come ashore except in very special circumstances when the currents are a certain way, and so it's unusual for them to come on shore. So we don't know. That's one of those difficult questions to answer.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment? I guess no slips. Okay, very good when we've received this item. The next item is the discussion for item 2. Will the clerk please read this one into the record?
Item number 2 is to receive a presentation on the Tri-County's Hydrogen Readiness Plan and statewide hydrogen vehicle programs.
Before we hand the baton over to Ben, we're talking about a tri-county approach to promote alternative fuel vehicles and the needed infrastructure between Ventura, Santa Barbara, and San Luis Obispo County. This approach has been successful now for many years to enable that our region is competitive and is able to secure both federal and state funding, especially when we are competing with larger metropolitan areas that serve a much larger driving population. It has also proven to be an effective use of resources when we partner with the 3 counties, because we are allowed to share the time of managing the grant. And grant management is a job all to itself, as far as ensuring that the funding is tracked and the reports are provided back to the grant agency that's providing the funds. Previous efforts of this tri-county approach include an EV readiness plan and an alternative fuels readiness plan. For the Tri-County Hydrogen Readiness Plan, our partners included Ventura County and San Luis Obispo County APCDs, the Central Coast Clean Cities Coalition, UC Irvine Advanced Power and Energy Program, Energy Independence Now, Ivor John Associates, Community Environmental Council, and AZ Safety. Today, we'll receive a presentation from Ben Ellenberger, Manager of Technology and Environmental Assessment Division for the district.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Thank you, Chairman Mosby, members of the board. I'm going to talk about the work we've done under this Energy Commission grant, again with our partners through the 3 districts. So I'll first just kind of talk and give an overview of what's going on statewide in terms of rolling out fuel cell electric vehicles and rolling out the infrastructure to support them. Talk a little more locally about the perspective, what we see going on locally. Then talk about what our goals were for this plan, the work we did under it, the things that we learned as we worked through it, and then what we see as the next steps going forward. So just to start, and kind of a reminder for everyone in the room, one of the main reasons that we were working on zero emission vehicle projects and mobile source projects is because mobile sources are a big part of the ozone precursor emissions in the county. Vessels in the channel are a huge part, and then onshore on-road mobile vehicles and off-road mobile vehicles. All of those put together are over 60% of our total ozone precursor emissions. So anything we can do to reduce emissions from vehicles goes a long way to improving the air quality in the county. Statewide, right now, there's a network of stations being built and funded by the Energy Commission. There's 38 stations open statewide right now, or by the end of this year, they expect 38 stations to be open. There's a total of 56 stations that have been approved for funding, and so those remainder of those stations expect to be built and developed over the next couple of years. And the Energy Commission has kind of been on a schedule pretty much every fall, putting out a request for proposals and funding another round of stations each year. And lately, it's been about a 2-year time period from a station getting approved to getting built and operated. In the region, the Santa Barbara station is the only station that's up and running right now. A station is in development in Thousand Oaks. That's the nearest one towards us, and that's expected to be up and running by the end of this year. Right now, there are no other stations in the Tri-County region that have been funded. So, and this also shows you really where the state strategy is. Really, they're focusing 2 core markets, the LA area and the San Francisco area. That's the majority of the stations that have been funded so far. And then they view the rest of the stations around the state really as destination stations. And that's really how the Santa Barbara station got funded. It was viewed as something that would support people in LA who would buy vehicles, have someplace to go, and to fuel as they while they're visiting. The other part of that strategy is the connector stations, the ones you see along the I-5 to facilitate travel up and down between San Francisco and LA. The Santa Barbara station right now sort of serves as a connector station. The Toyotas have a range of just over 300 miles, and it's just under 300 miles from us to the closest station on the 101 in San Jose. So you can just barely make it, but it's pretty tenuous right now. Then statewide, the other things that people are working on with the fuel cell electric vehicles, in addition to the passenger vehicles that are available right now, there's 3 transit agencies in the state that are operating fuel cell electric buses, 1 in the Bay Area, 2 down in the LA area. And work's really beginning on medium and heavy duty vehicles. And that's long-term, people expect fuel cell electric vehicles to be really competitive in the medium and heavy duty range. So package delivery companies are looking to introduce those as some pilot projects for delivery vans, drayage trucks, which are the trucks that support ports and haul containers from the ports to rail yards. We expect probably some pilot projects to be seen in to support the LA ports and Oakland ports. And then the other part that people are looking at is like short haul trucks, especially to support ag operations, to haul crops from ag producers to distribution centers and packing centers. So the work we did under this readiness planning was funded by a grant from the Energy Commission. we with our partners, applied for and received the grant. And there were several main parts of that. So the first part was a regional plan. Look at where the first wave of stations that would be built in the region were likely to be located. Go out and evaluate potential sites, get that information together, have that be a resource for station developers. And then also put together a permitting toolkit so that local lead agencies would have the materials they need when somebody comes in and says, you know, I've got funding, I want to build a station here, and then comes in to actually apply for their land use permit, that the lead agencies would have the materials they need to review and approve the station application. To do community outreach, just raise general awareness, answer people's questions about the technology, about the fuel source, and about the vehicles. Do outreach to first responders so that local first responder agencies would have the information they need to respond to anything. And then to go out to public fleets and assess the potential for public fleets to adopt the vehicles. So this shows the network of gasoline stations in the county right now. So all those purple dots are the gasoline stations. That's what we need, right, to support people driving conventional vehicles right now. There's one yellow dot on Santa Barbara that shows the one existing hydrogen station in the region. So really the first part of this was, you know, where was it likely to be the initial network of stations in the county to support the early adopters of fuel cell electric vehicles. And so to do that, we worked with the group from UC Irvine, and they used a really similar methodology to what the state uses when they're prioritizing funding for stations. So these are the spots that would likely be score higher on the applications to receive funding for stations. And really, what that looks at is who were the early adopters for battery electric vehicles, hybrid electric vehicles, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. Look at take registration data and population data, and then try and find locations that are centered on those areas as much as possible. So we took this output and used this to kind of help guide, you know, where are the areas that we would likely want to do most of the initial outreach. But we tried to caution people throughout the report that, you know, this is not the be-all and end-all. The station developers, when they're looking at station sites, you know, they're gonna look at what's the local demand, what's the demand from people coming to a place as a destination, what would be the demand of the site, you know, as a connector from one region to another, and then also would there be any local fleets, you know, what's the potential for heavy-duty use. So when it comes down to selecting an individual site and you know, locating a specific station, we tried to be careful to caution people that you know, that this is not a fix. These are not the only possible places that a station could be successful. So moving on from that to the outreach and education part of the project. This was actually, it was a pleasant surprise to us, and it was an example of how quickly the infrastructure development is moving. At the beginning of the project, we thought we might be preparing a lot of training material ourselves, you know, gathering a lot of information from original sources. In the last couple of years, there's been a lot of work statewide and nationwide to develop a lot of that material. So really this turned into a project of gathering that all in one place, going out to planning agencies, going out to fire agencies, and providing them with packages of these material. So the governor's business office has put together a really good permitting guidebook that lead agencies can use. National Renewable Energy Labs has put together resources for local agencies. National Fire Prevention Association, Hydrogen Safety Panel has put together training material. So we worked to get all that material together, get that out to the first responder agencies, get that to the permitting agencies so that they'd have the material that they need to do their jobs. We also, through this project, did fleet outreach. We went and made contact with the public fleets in the region. gave them an online questionnaire to kind of see where they were with their knowledge of that, the potential for fleet adoption, and then also did public outreach activities to get out to the general public and just raise general awareness. So what were the things we learned as we did this? So the first big lesson we learned was a need for redundancy. We talked to the car manufacturers, and for them, to get their vehicles out to customers, is they need to go through vehicle dealers. And so for the vehicle dealers, it's a pretty big investment of time and money to train their people to sell the new cars, to have their maintenance staff get trained up on serving the cars. And those dealers really want to see a redundant network in an area with a few stations fairly close to each other before they're going to make that investment in getting up to speed to sell vehicles to the public. So getting a redundant network in the region is really going to be an important next step before local dealers would start selling to local customers. The other thing we heard a lot as we did public outreach, there were a lot of people who were supportive of zero-emission vehicles and generally, supportive of fuel cell electric vehicles especially for local direct health benefits. But they really wanted to hear us talk about renewable hydrogen and the efforts to reduce the greenhouse gas impacts of fuel cell electric vehicles. So right now, the hydrogen that's produced has to be at least 33% renewably sourced. And the goal is to increase that and to get more and more the hydrogen produced from renewable sources going forward. For first responders, when we went out to the fire departments, we learned they're really busy and they've got a lot of existing training requirements in place. And so it didn't work for them as a model to sit down, have everyone come in for a special one-off training on fuel cell electric vehicles. Really what they wanted to do was to have us go to their trainers, get their trainers trained so that they had the material they needed, they knew what they needed to do, and then they could incorporate that into their regular training schedules and work on that on a time frame that works for them. For fleet operators, they saw some challenges, especially with very early adoption. One thing is, right now, the nearest stations really want to see a dealer offering vehicles in the region before they would start adding vehicles to their fleet. They think that's important to save.
Got a question for you.
Thank you. I'm curious, when you're talking about fleets, are you talking about automobiles or trucks? And have you looked specifically, it sounded from what you said earlier that it's trucks that are the big market potentially for hydrogen. And so I would like you to talk more about what they need and where they're manufactured and what we know so far.
Oh, great. So right now, what's available right now is 3 passenger vehicles. There's the Toyota Mirai and the Honda Clarity, which are the sedans, and then the Hyundai, which is a medium-sized SUV. So that would be the immediate question to fleets: is are you interested in that? And there are a lot of fleet operators who are interested in those. We've also heard a lot who say, "Man, it would be great once we can get a heavy-duty truck or medium-duty truck." For their maintenance people like that.
So those don't even exist yet?
Those are not available right now. And then the same thing with the really heavy-duty trucks, the tractor-trailer type trucks. Those are, there's a few pilot projects just getting started, but those are not available yet. Let's see. I think that's...
Another question for you.
Oh, sure.
Another question.
Well, that'll be really handy when you get something that could replace the Tier 4s, because there's so many of those catching fire right now. That technology is really proven to be a failure. And
yeah, that's, again, most people who are working on the fuel cell technology really see that as being a strong part of their market, and that's where they really expect a lot of adoption down the road.
Well, I think to the extent that you have anything to say about it, tell those guys, go to the commercial trucks,
Yeah.
because they're all looking for something better anyway, and if that, there's a lot of incentive to try something different. The other question that I had is how much is this stuff now for a gallon equivalent? And I think it's a pound, right? A pound and a gallon is about the same thing?
Actually, I'm going to turn.
Kg, right, okay. It's got the same.
Yeah, a kilogram of hydrogen is about the equivalent energy to a gallon of gasoline. I've been driving a Mirai for about a year now, 10,000 miles. And when I fill up, and that's about 4 kilograms, it's about $60. And that'll take me 300 miles.
Yeah, $60 is.
And for the moment, I'm not paying any of that because for 3 years, Toyota is paying my fuel bill. So
Up to 10,000 miles a year.
total of $15,000 over 3 years.
Right, okay. So that's still $15 a gallon, equivalent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the efficiency of the vehicles is I'm getting 70 miles to the gallon. So you can, that's almost double what you'd get with a gallon of gasoline mostly.
Okay, well, what they told me earlier, because I was quite interested in that, is that you're going to get about the same mileage
Per dollar.
per okay, maybe I misunderstood that. I was thinking I was going $15 a gallon equivalent, and that's going to be a killer. So it's about the same per mile.
Maybe
I'd have to
we can
figure it
do
out
this.
later.
I plan to speak in a moment. And
Oh,
I can
sure.
talk some more about that, but I'd like to give it back to Ben now.
Great, thank you.
So where do we think we're going to go from here as an air district? One, we think our role is continuing to do outreach. The Zero Emission Vehicle Implementation Grant that San Luis Obispo was successful in applying for, and includes funding for work here and in Ventura County. Again, we're working on that together. That'll fund continued outreach and continued support to stations owners and developers. That grant will allow us to go out and do assessments for battery electric vehicle charging infrastructure at multi-unit dwellings and businesses, and it'll also fund work where we can go out to specific sites who might be looking at installing fueling stations for hydrogen, and help the site owners and the developers kind of do part of that assessment to look at the viability on specific sites. As we were talking earlier, medium and heavy duty is really still in the pilot project phase. It's still really early, but we want to keep looking at that, looking for opportunities in the region to identify pilot projects, and again, continuing to seek funding opportunities. Right now, the region is probably on the lower priority scale for statewide funding. So if we can find ways to identify local demand that would support more local stations, we think that could strengthen the case for more funding for local and regional infrastructure. And so with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would the mitigation funds that were described by the director earlier be a source of funding for some of the vehicle fueling stations?
Yes, that's definitely one of the options that we were looking at in mitigation funding is funding for stations, and then also funding for vehicles.
Other questions? I'll give you a couple.
All right.
I think probably one of your most significant hurdles is on, as you mentioned on page 14, and that is the fact that we need 5 to 10% of what existing gasoline. So in our area, you need 25 to 50 before we start seeing this moving forward, and that's definitely a significant hurdle, along with, of course, a dealer coming in to supply that and make that movement. And of course, when you're trying to go up against something that's already existing, it's always hard to take it on. So I know that. Are there any vehicles in the fleet at APCD?
No.
Oh.
And that's very true. I don't want to give the impression that next year or even 2 years from now you're going to see hydrogen cars all over the region. It's still pretty early. There's again the state funding. There's a strong state commitment to building out the first 100 stations and infrastructure. As I said, we got about 56. So expect continued state support for the infrastructure, and the manufacturers, are showing a really strong support in developing vehicles and getting them onto the market. But it is still pretty early in the adoption phase, and there's a long way to go before they really become common.
Right. And that brings me to another question statement on that we talked before earlier on page 34, 35, and that's the manufacturing of the hydrogen. And I think it's important to know that currently right now we don't have all the green energy that's out there, but there is a carbon footprint with manufacturing the hydrogen. I think it's important that that's identified, that as a qualifier or disqualifier in the document relating that, hey, if you're burning coal to make this hydrogen, you got an issue.
Correct.
Or are you going to go nuclear to make the hydrogen? I'm not,
And yes, and right now the hydrogen that's getting used and sold in California, the vast majority of it is getting produced at sites in California that produce hydrogen that have been producing hydrogen all along as an industrial gas that gets used in other processes, and so the majority of it right now is being produced from natural gas, and so the companies that are producing it for fuel are getting a portion of that natural gas from renewable sources to meet that 33% requirement. Even on that basis, when you look at the greenhouse gas emissions on a life cycle basis, it's still cleaner than a conventional car. But to get those greenhouse gas emissions for fuel cell vehicles down even lower, you do need to shift further and further towards renewable sources of the electricity, renewable sources of the power to produce the hydrogen.
It's something you guys might look into, is I know a lot of the power manufacturers, electric manufacturers right now, there are times of days that they have a surplus of electricity. And if somebody could harness that, and I know the city of Lompoc, we belong to NCPA, and there's times we're having to pay to put power on the grid because there's such a gluttonous surplus. And this would actually be something they could actually, instead of paying to get rid of the electricity, and it sounds crazy, right? Yeah. But you'd had something like this piggyback, then you could have a source, be a way to walk right into this and maybe step up a little faster, quicker.
Definitely, and that's when you look at people statewide, looking at the statewide strategy. That's exactly one of the things they expect to see, especially as more solar power comes into the state grid, and you do see more variation from throughout the day. Is finding a way to essentially store that electricity that gets overproduced at certain times of the day, and they actually expect using that to generate hydrogen that then could be stored and either used to put electricity back in the grid or then be used for vehicle fuel as being pretty competitive down the road.
And may I? Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question may be a little far afield, but I was so amazed when I read recently that we don't have enough people to fill jobs for servicing cars, and it's about $100 an hour job. And I just wonder what role we might play. This is for regular cars, but particularly coming online electric and hydrogen cars, and making sure that we're training people who can actually do this, because it sounds like a pretty good job.
Yes, that's definitely a lot of people who are working on the infrastructure rollout and vehicle adoption in general. That's something that's in the conversation right now. I know some of like the community colleges, or there's training centers in the LA area that are getting up to speed to do that. But as they become more and more widely adopted, I expect that would be something that would need to be incorporated into technician training more widely throughout the state.
So our community colleges could be doing this, and we might be working with them to make sure that they're ahead of the curve?
I'd expect that eventually.
I could add a little bit. I've been the chair of the Central Coast Clean Cities Coalition for a number of years when I worked out of the San Luis Obispo Air District office. And as a Clean City Coalition, the national approach is to provide specific community colleges in the state and the nation, for that matter, that are geared to advance the understanding and the ability of technicians to work on this advanced vehicle technology. So I know there's a network in place. The closest one for us is further down in Southern California, but it could be expanded. We actually tried to work with Cuesta College a long time ago, but it's something that could come here to Hancock, even to Santa Barbara City College. It could be something that we consider, even as the outreach of the ZEV readiness plan that APCD's taking the lead on, SLO APCD.
Any public comment?
I do have one speaker slip for Ivor John.
Chairman Busby, members of the board, my name is Ivor John, and I've been in Santa Barbara now for 30 years, and my first job was the Air Pollution Control District. So as I begin, I find that you know, it's a real privilege to come back knowing what an improvement there's been in the air quality in my 30 years in this community, and what a privilege it is for me to be working with the APCD again, as I was participating with Ben and our team in the preparation of this hydrogen readiness plan. But I speak to you today as a member of the public, and before I begin, I just want to comment on the video. I'm working also with Lloyd's Register of Shipping. It's a global organization of marine specialized people, 10,000 colleagues around the world. This is a video I'll share with them. I was quite impressed, and it's something they should see. So good work, and I'll be sharing that on for you. So having worked on the readiness plan, I've been driving a Mirai for a year. There's no doubt in my mind that hydrogen is coming. It's a clear part of the state strategy for zero-emission vehicles. And I think it's been a long time coming, but now things are really getting into alignment where this is happening. There's a real commitment from especially the Japanese manufacturers to bring vehicles to market. Ben said there's going to be a flow. We should be seeing 50,000 vehicles in California by 2025. And when the Tokyo Olympics occur in 2020, you're going to see a big promotion of hydrogen, because Tokyo is focusing on hydrogen and clean vehicles as one of their promotional items around those Olympics. And along that note, Supervisor Adams, Toyota is now building fuel cell vehicle buses. And we're seeing a lot of movement on buses already, even though, as Ben says, not there with the tractor trailers yet. We're moving into heavy duty, and the state of California is definitely got some good programs coming up on buses, and then right behind it, drayage and long-haul transport too. So I think it's coming, and now that we've written the plan, how are we going to use it, and what does it do for us? Well, we can sit back and say, well, it's coming, and we're ready. We've got places where we think stations will go. We've got firemen who are aware that there are training materials for response. Permit, officers and agencies know how to permit these stations. But my message or my request to you all is to say, let's not just sit back. This is a time to seize an opportunity here. We have been, privileged to get this grant from the state. We're the first group in the state to have monies to do readiness planning, and we have really used this time to build great relationships for the community at the state level, with the manufacturers, with the fuel providers, and now is a great time for us to kind of seize the opportunity that's before us to keep going. So please don't park this plan. What we want to do now is say, how do we implement it, and make sure we take advantage of the monies that are available now, and find creative ways to keep the momentum going. So there are three things, if I may go over a little bit, three things that I can really clear coming out of this. Ben has said it. You won't get a program going until you've got vehicles. You won't get vehicles and dealerships coming here until there's at least a few stations, and you need money to fund the stations. The state will give us some money, but the more we can step up with the mitigation, Supervisor Hartman, I think that's a great way to be creative to find matching funds locally. and then even attract the private sector as well to come to the table here. We've got a great opportunity. I think once we have 5 stations, 10 would be great, but 5 will get us stations up in North County here, a couple more in South County, one in Lompoc maybe, but we need an incipient infrastructure, and then it'll follow. Once it's commercially viable, we can get out of the way and just let it all happen, but we've set the right path in the right direction. So I think this is just an exciting time. It's all just there for us. I'd like to see us keep the momentum going now that we've got this great start. Thank you.
Thanks for your enthusiasm.
Mhm.
We'll let you go over because of your excitement. One more question, I guess, if I could. Is there something there's no threat of crashing our electrical grid, because we're going to have all these hydrogen stations built, and I mean, is there, because everybody's going LED, we have plenty of electricity all the time, or is there?
No, the stations right now don't have a large electric demand. The stations that receive fuel that's centrally produced, it's trucked in tubes, it's stored under pressure at the station, so there's some electric demand for the compressors to compress it when it's put into the cars. If you start to see stations that produce fuel on site, which is where some people think it's going to go, where you would just use electricity on site to actually produce and store the hydrogen on site, then those would need to have some sort of enough power source to produce that electricity. I believe some of the stations in the most recent grant application are actually proposing to do that, to have solar power on site and actually produce the hydrogen on site.
So if we approached 5% of our vehicle fleet in California, would that affect something? Would it affect the grid if everybody? I mean, not everybody can put solar panels up because, they don't have enough room if they're making enough hydrogen. It just seems like you had a potential to have an effect.
Yes, that's definitely something that would need to get approached as at a systems level, at a statewide level. If you start seeing more and more produced directly from electricity, of making sure that you have those electricity sources available to it. But again, that's where a lot of people actually see that matching really well as more renewable sources of electricity come on the grid, that you don't have control over the time when those renewable sources are producing electricity. That actually that would be a benefit to grid stability of then having this this process that you can use to use that electricity to make hydrogen when you've got the excess, and then store that to either again feed that back into the grid later as electricity, or use it as a vehicle fuel.
It'd be interesting to see a calculation if you had 90% of the fleet or 50% of the fleet converted. What is the demand potential across the grid? I mean, we might not have enough. We have to put some more dams in or something.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Then we've received item number 2, correct? The next item is discussion item number 3. Clerk.
Item number 3 is to consider the fiscal year 2017-18 proposed budget as follows. A, receive the proposed budget for fiscal year 2017-18. B, hold a public hearing to accept comments and provide direction to staff regarding changes desired by the board. And C, schedule a budget adoption hearing for June 15th, 2017.
All right, thank you. First off, I want to thank all 8 of you for being here today. We were a little nervous before our meeting started. We were afraid we might not have a quorum, so I really do appreciate everyone's time and patience for being here today. Today is our first of 2 APCD board meetings on our proposed budget for fiscal year 2017-18. We published our budget on April 7th. With public notices placed in the newspaper on April 9th. We then held a public workshop April 18th. Between now and then, we were confronted with new information that required an update to our budget to better reflect our projected revenue and expenditures. That would include the April 17th notification of a bankruptcy of a very large oil and gas facility, and then on the 27th, ARB announced the grant funding for the school bus replacement program that we heard about earlier this afternoon. We took a conservative approach with our budget on the anticipated revenue that would likely be realized in the midst of this changing situation. We look forward to presenting our budget to you today and then bringing it back on the 15th of June. To date, we have not received any comments on our draft budget. I will be joined by Tina Aguilar this afternoon, the Air District's Manager of Administrative Division. Tina has been a critical lead in developing the proposed budget, and she's been busy since we had to redo it once already. The management team worked collaboratively to develop a balanced budget for your board's consideration. We have 17 slides, and we anticipate it'll take us approximately 20 minutes to work through the slides. And if possible, if you could hold your comments to the end, it would be beneficial. So each year our budget process begins with programming of our revenues. After revenues are forecasted, expenditures, including salaries and benefits, are programmed to equal their revenue, thus presenting a balanced budget. With the continued reduction in revenue associated with the shutdown of Line 901, the recent announcement of the Veneco bankruptcy and quitclaim of Platform Holly, and the increase in pension cost, we closely evaluated our priorities and resources to develop the balanced budget. Our proposed budget is approximately $10.3 million. This is an increase of 9.3%, which is largely due to a one-time grant of the school bus replacement program. One thing different about this year's proposed budget is we called out the district's operating budget, not just the total that includes the pass-through funds that have limited legislative purposes, such as grant funds through our Carl Moyer program that legislature defines how it can be used. Pass-through represents approximately 23.9% of our total budget, around $2.4 million. My goal is to continue to focus on developing a balanced budget that avoids using strategic reserves for ongoing cost. Even though the district has a healthy reserve, I want to avoid the situation of operating in a structural deficit. One thing to note on this slide is the third bullet highlighting our staff levels. While the budget is presented, it includes 43 FTE, which includes 4 positions that were vacant last year. We're continuing with that projection, but due to the current uncertainty associated with the large revenue streams, we're filling any current vacancies that may occur as we go forward until the uncertainties have been resolved. On the revenue side, historically, the cyclical nature of our reevaluation fees has been a 3-year cycle. We've had a high, a mid-high, and a low budget year, with fiscal year 2017-18 scheduled to be the high year of that cycle. With the recent unforeseen bankruptcy of a large regulated source that was due for reevaluation in the upcoming fiscal year, the predicted high year upturn will now become the mid-high fiscal year. Going into that phase results in approximately $197,000 more in reevaluation fees compared to our current low cycle year. As mentioned earlier, on April 27th, we received word from ARB that we were awarded the $620,000 to fund the 6 school buses. We've also experienced an increase in the number of vehicles that are registered in Santa Barbara County, which resulted in an increase in our DMV funds of $216,000. This is offset with the continued revenue decline from the pipeline of approximately $500,000 that's a result of that line not being functioning. On the expenditure side, again, similar to last year's budget, management team took a very close review of the items included in our services and supplies category to identify reductions that could be taken to provide a balanced budget. Some of those additional expenses that were reduced include small equipment purchases, office expenses, and special department expenses. We also identified 2 one-time expenses that could assist in our agency's overall efficiency and effectiveness. We have a paperless system where we're trying to go electronic with our huge volumes of paper, and accounting software. Both of these one-time expenditures will improve the district's overall productivity and reduce long-term expenses. There's uncertainty I wanted to highlight on this slide that is associated with the federal budget that's allocated to air district grants throughout the nation. The Office of Management and Budget has proposed cuts to the federal fiscal year 2018 to state and local air grants under the Section 103 and 105 grants of the Clean Air Act. We received Section 105 grant funding from the EPA. While it's still early in the federal approval process, Congress and the administration will continue deliberations as they work to finalize the budget that will take effect in October of this year. At this time, it's difficult to ascertain the magnitude of the funding cuts that may affect district operations. We will continue monitoring the federal budget discussions and keep your board apprised. If necessary, long-term budget modifications will be addressed throughout the year to ensure expenses occur within the revenues that's been allocated. So the next 4 slides, I'd like to highlight some of our major accomplishments within the current fiscal year. On the administrative side, under fiscal, the execution of our current budget and the building up of the budget that's before you today. I just want to highlight last year's budget with the loss of the functioning line 901. That was a challenge for the district to provide a budget where we can live within our means, and I'm very pleased to report that we've been able to track and follow that budget very closely, and we're living within our means. On human resources front, we've been able to implement 2 new policies for the APCD staff. One is a telecommuting policy and the other is an employee recognition and services award. And on the monitoring station side, we continue to collect high quality ambient air quality data. We collect and validated 100% of our air quality and meteorological measurements. And we've also quite a bit actually last fire season, we were able to deploy temporary monitoring stations to better assess the wildfires and provide that information to other agencies and the general public. Engineering, we've been busy within our permitting and air toxics program. We've performed over 550 permitting actions. We hired and trained 2 new engineers, 1 source test and permitting engineer and 1 in the health risk assessments arena. We've been able to implement new screening tools for the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessments updated risk guidelines. And then, as you're aware, under the offsets program, we were able to propose and secure board support for our new source review rules. That was a significant effort for us. It took us many years to bring that proposal to your board for consideration. And then upon your approval, we move forward in a very expeditious way to update our policies, procedures, as well as frequently asked questions on our website. In compliance, interagency coordination has been critical. Working with the county fire department has been one of our efforts that we initiated this year as it relates to the open burn program. We're just beginning those efforts and we'll actually be continuing that into the new fiscal year. We've responded to over 300 air pollution complaints versus 227 in the last calendar year. And the variance petitions have been quite busy. We've been able to process over 50 variance petitions, primarily related to line 901 and the facilities that are dependent on that line and for their operations. We are also working to improve and ensure that our district variance program is operating in the most streamlined fashion possible. And then the last division I'll highlight is T division. Significant within this division was the approval of from your board of our 2016 ozone plan. That's a 3-year update that we will continue to discuss as we move into our new non-attainment transitional status. We were able to hire and train an air quality air quality specialist for emission inventory work. Been able to award $1.2 million in voluntary air quality grants. And as you were able to see a demonstration, I think it was 2 meetings back, we launched our new permitted facilities map, excuse me. And then lastly on this slide is the Marine Speed Vessel Reduction Program. With the ozone season in 2016, we were able to secure participation in this with a wide array of container vessels, but secured over 25.6 tons of NOx emissions. But one thing I want to highlight as far as the district accomplishments across all of our divisions is our enhanced interagency coordination, where not only with wildfires, but also with the H2S incident in Goleta, and the amount of assistance that we've been able to provide and will continue to build off of it when we're faced with challenges, and communicating that not only to other agencies, but also to the general public. That involves our monitoring staff, our compliance division, and our T division through outreach and communication. I'd now like to turn the presentation over to Ms. Aguilar, who will walk us through the specific details of the proposed budget.
Okay, good afternoon. As Aaron mentioned, revenues are taking their predicted upturn next fiscal year, 9.3%. That increase is mainly due to two things. One is the cyclical 3-year reevaluation cycle that she explained. With the new mid-high year, we expect to collect $861,000 versus the $1.2 million that was originally budgeted before Veneco's bankruptcy announcement declared on April 17th. Due to that unforeseen circumstance, we reduced the budget to better reflect what we expected to actually collect. The district plans for this 3-year cycle by depositing money into a fund balance account during the high years and withdrawing funds during the low years to maintain approximately the same amount of revenue from these fees annually. However, deposit into the designation account is unlikely for the next fiscal year due to the circumstances. The second reason for the increase in revenue is due to the district expecting to receive an additional $620,000 of funds from the State Reserve Project solicitation under the Carl Moyer program. This one-time solicitation of funds are allocated for school buses that must comply with the statewide truck and bus regulation. Federal, state, and other government revenue shows an increase of $118,000 due to an increase in DMV revenue, which is a $6 surcharge the DMV collects for every registered vehicle in the county to help reduce air pollution from motor vehicles. There has been an uptick in the amount of vehicles registered in our county, and the revenue is increasing by $216,000. This increase is being offset by the completion of a 2-year California Energy Commission grant that Ben just presented to you a few minutes ago. The use of fund balance has decreased since the prior year due to the reevaluation cycle that was noted earlier. Here's a breakout of our operating revenue. I know this slide is somewhat hard to see and wanted to point out that the same information can be found on page 20 of the budget document. The district wanted to show the public of our $10 million total annual budget, how much of that is considered for operations and how much is passed through monies for grant programs. We created these tables to better illustrate this, which helps the reader have a better understanding of the makeup of the district's finances. As you can see, approximately 23.9% or $2.4 million of the district's revenue is slated for grant programs as pass-through funds. Therefore, the operating budget for fiscal year 17-18 is $7.8 million. Here's the operating revenue plan broken out by category. Licenses and permits continue to be the largest chunk of the district's revenue at 41%, followed by federal, state, and other government revenue at 29.5%. Now to expenditures. When looking at the district's expenditures, you'll see that the salaries and benefits category has increased by approximately $150,000. For fiscal year 17-18, the district contribution rates for each retirement tier are increasing noticeably by an average of 3.855%. This increase is due to the Santa Barbara County Employee Retirement System lowering the assumed rate of return from 7.5% to 7%. The reduction was based on demographic assumptions that SBCERS members are living longer, along with lowering the rate of return to better reflect the investment portfolio of the system. The impacts of the change on contributions will be phased in gradually over 5 years from fiscal year 17-18 to fiscal year 21-22. which means the district will continue to see increased pension costs over the next 5 years. Because we had to absorb the pension costs, the management team diligently conducted a line item review of all lines within the services and supplies budget and reduced expenditures where they saw fit while trying to maximize the efficiency of staff and resources. This exercise was able to cut an additional $23,000 from the S&S budget. This, however, was offset by the increase of the additional one-time pass-through monies received for school bus grants. The fixed assets category increased by $139,000 due to the need to purchase a new district vehicle within our T division, along with new accounting software for our fiscal department. However, these purchases do not affect the overall budget because there is a committed fund balance account that is used strictly for fixed asset purchases. That account will pay for the fixed assets purchased during the year. As I mentioned a few slides ago, the district wanted to show what the operating budget is versus monies used for grant programs. These tables illustrate the operating and pass-through monies for expenditures. As you can see, the district plans to pay out $2.4 million for grant programs as pass-through funds. You'll also notice that our operating services and supplies is higher than the prior year. That's mainly because of the one-time projects Aaron mentioned earlier. The district plans to complete a one-time project to electronically archive approximately 800 boxes in our storage facility. We anticipate the cost of this project to be $125,000. However, once this project is complete, the district will be vacating the building used for storage and will save approximately $12,000 per year in rent costs going forward. The rest of the increase can be attributed to the increase in administrative funds received for the one-time school bus project. Here's a good visual of the district's operating expenditure breakdown. The blue section, which takes up almost 3/4 of the pie chart, is salaries and benefits at $5.78 million. Of that expense, approximately $1.46 million, or roughly 25%, can be attributed to retirement costs. As in previous years, a key measure of the district's fiscal health is the size of the fund balance relative to the total annual budget. With the projected total fund balance of $5.3 million, or 52% of the total annual budget, we feel that the fund balances continue to be adequate and provide the district with the cushion that is necessary in case of an emergency. On this slide, you can see the fund balance categories and the associated amounts and percentages in each. I will now turn it back over to Erin so she can discuss the district goals and objectives next fiscal year.
So in addition to our core responsibilities to carry out the district's mission and mandate, the following are key initiatives we'll be focusing on the next fiscal year. The top one is to monitor and assess any fiscal implications that relate to changes at the federal level as well as local sources to ensure that we have adequate resources our resources are best allocated to carry out the district's mission and mandates. With the reduction in revenue now going into the second year, efficiency is extremely important to us. So ensuring that we realize efficiency improvements and process streamlining with going paperless system across the district, implementing new accounting software, as well as providing an upgrade to the district's in-house compliance database are the three primary areas we'll be focusing. And then lastly, just reiterating the importance for interagency coordination. Later within this next coming fiscal year, working with the county fire to implement rollout improvements to the open burning program. That will be something that will be brought to your board for discussion. And then with emergency response with wildfires and any other incident that may occur. Ensuring that we have necessary resources, not just staff, but monitoring equipment as well to carry out those functions. That concludes our budget presentation. Thank you, and we're available for questions.
Questions? There we go.
This isn't so much on the budget. I'm just curious about the 6 school buses and if we know where they're going or how they're out.
Yeah, the grant that was made available was a one-time opportunity for school districts statewide to participate in working with school districts who weren't yet in compliance with the state's bus reg. And we had two districts that were eligible. We had the Lompoc School District and Santa Ynez. Jim Frederickson worked very efficiently to talk and communicate with those two school districts to see if either of those were interested and available to participate. And Lompoc Unified School District was eligible for that and willing and had the necessary funds. They had to provide match funding as well.
Next question.
I'd just like to compliment you on this budget presentation. I mean, the document itself, easily read, easily understood, and I think it's a terrific presentation. I want to compliment you on it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tina. You did a great job.
And staying out of reserves, right?
Yeah, we have used some strategic reserves for one-time expenditures that were identified. Not strategic, fund balance.
Sorry, we have an operational fund balance that we will be tapping into for the one-time projects.
I think I did that same mistake during the public workshop. You'd think I'd learn.
You were just testing staff.
Yeah.
I know that. I know how it goes. Any others? Any questions? One more?
Yes. Could you describe the 3-year, how you do that? It sounds like you've discovered a method to smooth out some of the ups and downs in the budget. And do any other agencies use that? Do you know? In Santa Barbara County?
I don't think so. I don't even think any other air districts use it. I think it's unique. And how long has it been in place? Okay. Yeah, forever.
So on the slide, you can see we illustrate a high year, the mid-high year, and also a low year. And then the blue column is the average of the 3 years. So on a low year, we do have to use part of the reevaluation fund balance, pull monies in, and then on the high years, we deposit money into that fund balance.
That sounds like a very intriguing approach to think about for other agencies and government entities. Thank you.
Self-control, right? Any questions in Santa Barbara?
All good in Santa Barbara.
Just checking.
I'm listening. I'm listening every word.
Thanks for being there.
Yes,
I thought I heard snoring coming from Santa Barbara.
Any public comment? Are you kidding me? Did a good job. Okay, will the clerk please take a roll call vote? Need a motion. There we go. Motions.
So moved.
Second. There's your second.
Okay, Director Bennett?
Before I vote, I'm confused. I thought you were bringing the budget back in June to be voted on.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
The staff recommendation is to receive and file the report and set a hearing for June 15th to hear the final budget.
Okay, so I'm voting to say aye for receive and file. Thank you.
And set a hearing.
Yeah, that was the motion. Joan said it real fast.
All right, Director Snyder?
Aye.
Richardson? Aye. Wolf? Aye. Hartman?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
Andrezek?
Aye.
And Chair Mosby?
Aye.
The motion passes.
Okay. That's just about it, right? Okay, but before we adjourn, I'd like to remind the members of the Hearing Board Nominating Committee to stay at the dais. That's Directors, Williams isn't here, Bennett, Richardson, Adam, and Patino. So you have...
Well, Patino's not here either.
Director Williams.
Okay, so with that, we're adjourned to Thursday, June 15th in Santa Maria at 1 p.m.
We're going to go.
They just didn't want you to...
Aye.